Hello, everybody. You've tuned in to Eric Jose on Making a Murderer on YouTube. I cover Making a Murderer, Stephen Avery, and Brendan Dassey. I cover some other cases at times. I go over the documents, the photos, videos, anything case related. Plenty of videos you can check out, just like the one you're about to see.
Yeah,
and that part didn't make the recording, Paul. Just so you know.
Oh,
recording just started.
So, Mark and I did a wee list of things that would be better not ask you.
That you better not ask me?
Yeah, that you'd be better not ask you. To do with Siri, what happened to the crash on highway, whatever it was?
Oh.
Yeah, Uber.
Hey, dude.
Uber.
No big secret. I think Siri's an idiot.
Yeah, Uber.
Uh-huh.
Uber.
Insurance?
What about,
Aye.
Uber, I don't know. The one time I tried to use it, I ended up getting stranded because it wouldn't work. I got stranded like where I was, and, it's like, I decided to use Uber, and then it failed.
They saw that you were there, and then they cleared off.
Yeah.
What were they afraid of? What were they afraid of?
He's a public enemy of Wisconsin.
It must be. And then there was a few other things. I watched a video, and it was of things that you don't do when you're across in America. And I realised two of the things that I had done that were very bad was I mentioned gun control. You don't mention gun control to people in America.
Most of us.
And you don't mention car insurance.
And car insurance.
So basically, me and Mark are left with there's only really one question we can ask you. Could you please explain to us the control question?
Well, you have to wait. You have to wait until Carla eventually gets me my shirts, because that seems to be the difficult part. It's very difficult to get those shirts to leave Wisconsin. But once we get there, there will be a video that's going to explain it all again.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing because if we can stretch it out, then eventually even people in Wisconsin and those who don't understand the control question will eventually realize what it's all about.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
that's the idea.
Yep.
I'm hoping a lot of people in Wisconsin will be wearing them. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've saved one for me, one original.
Oh, one of the limited edition?
Yeah, I've got one. I haven't got around to doing the follow-up, but you know what it looks like, don't you?
The follow-up? Oh, is that going to be the one where... is that going to be the type, or what's it called, the prototype 2 shirt?
Yes.
which was, what was the message on that one?
And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe.
Yeah. I was doing that yesterday on my staircase video, and literally just as I was saying, please hit subscribe, or if you haven't already, please hit subscribe or whatever, somebody around here fired up their mower. You can actually hear like a mower firing up on that last little bit. It's funny. But I was like, screw it, it's 2 seconds. But anyway, funny things that happen when you're recording.
Mark, sorry.
Yes, sir. How's life in Scotland?
Absolutely fine. How's life in Greece?
I've been there and come back. I'm back in Romania now.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so Greece was nice. I always say to everyone, I know it's not always easy for everyone, but I always say, if there's a place in the world that you haven't been and you should go and see, Greece is that place.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's definitely a bucket list destination.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, the economy's a bit gone, but it's a great place to visit.
Right. A lot of historical stuff, I imagine.
Oh yeah, and just the way of life is very sort of back in yesteryear, especially out on the islands. you kind of really wind down and relax when you go to Greece. So.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So.
So I was thinking, this is the first time I've done a video of any type, of any significant type, since we did one in June.
Yeah, it's been a while.
The three of us. The three of us, when I was still in Manitowoc, just before I came home.
Right.
Richard, you'd already got home because, you got home there really fast through the airports of Chicago. And
yeah.
Bay.
I was just jetted right through those. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was one of the things we were not supposed to mention.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I remember.
Very efficient process there. It was
I had to mention it so I would remember not to mention it. So that's how that works. And in honor of Richard's journey in June, I did a pilgrimage back there, as you know, in August, and I followed his footsteps through Green Bay and Chicago, and all the way back to Los Angeles. Even better than that.
Did you stop at the subway where I met Scott Ellis? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I found him at the airport in Los Angeles, and we went down and had a bite to eat and some beers before I got on my plane back to Australia.
That was fun.
Very nice.
That was fun.
It was lovely. It was good fun. So. I won't mention any airports at all, okay? No discussion about airports.
No.
Yeah, airports are not the funnest place.
No, when I fly into to Manitowoc, I'm going to go straight to Chicago, hire a car, I'll pick the pair of you up, okay, and we'll just drive up to Manitowoc. That'll be the safest, and it'll be an automatic. Oh, that was another thing I was supposed to mention.
Oh yeah. All these things matter much more to you than they do to me, by the way. All right, so let's try to get on point here a little bit.
Yeah.
Paul's got a limited time, I think. He's got to go like polish a Masonic statue or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Is that what he calls it?
So, anyways, Judge Angela Sutkiewicz's decision. So, obviously, beyond the fact that she's referring to the 7 DVDs as CDs all throughout the thing, whatever, it may be a minor thing, but to me it just kind of stands out. And referring to Brendan as Brandon.
No, that's grubby.
Yeah, it's like, do you read these things? Or it's you just wonder how these discrepancies creep into her decisions, Just like in her last decision, like when she explained the Hoodlatch DNA experiments and stuff, it totally sounded like she did not fully read and understand that bit. And then you look at this one. Yeah. And then you look at this one, and it's like, that's just sloppy. I mean, calling them 7 CDs, Kratz made that mistake in one of the correspondences with Dean Strang or whatever it was, or with the court, where he called them CDs as well. So why would she go, I mean, and that got brought up in the course of these filings, right? And yet she goes and makes the same mistake. And it's just like, okay, well, I already don't really, Judge Angela Sutkiewicz doesn't really have much credibility with me at this point. So it doesn't really matter to me, but yeah, I just noticed that seemed very odd, those two things.
Is she just a judge just above a level of like Kaczynski when he became a judge?
She's like,
we're talking really low level judge, aren't we?
Well, she's Superior Court, I think. I think in Sheboygan that's Superior Court. But I don't know I think Superior Court denotes federal. So, but see, why is I don't know. The thing that's weird to me is, why is she all the way over in Sheboygan instead of in Manitowoc? Manitowoc has, or is it just because it was in Sheboygan originally, it's staying there?
No, is it not District 2? District 2 covers all of that. Sheboygan, Manitowoc.
So that's what, okay. So then the Court of Appeals was, I don't know.
Fond du Lac and a few other places.
So the Manitowoc would be the circuit court, Sheboygan would be the district court. Okay. So yeah, whatever the case is, yeah, she doesn't seem to be wanting to actually read and really get to grips with understanding what Kathleen Zellner is putting in her motions and in her replies and her responses and things. She doesn't. I just get the feeling that Judge Sutkiewicz is just kind of like, yeah, whatever, kind of skims it, gets a rough idea of what's going on, and then says no.
So yeah, I mean, the way I read it and understood what was going on, I mean, you could even tell in the tone of her response that I read, after reading about 3 sentences beyond the introduction, right, I knew exactly what her conclusion was going to be. Right. It was just in all the tone. But here's the point I'd like to make: is that if you buy a motor vehicle and it's only got 3 wheels instead of 4, mm-hmm, have you got anything at all, right? So, because it's not functional, it's not complete, it's not the full story without the 4 wheels. So right, if there's a series of DVDs and a CD, and the CD is missing, right, and held in the possession of Tom Fassbender, you haven't got the total story.
Right.
It matters. Yep. It matters not whether, I don't know whether it's true or not, it matters not whether something on the CD was also... Who's that in the background?
I'll be there in a minute.
Hurry on! It matters not whether the essence, and I don't know whether it's true, the essence of the CD is on the DVD. It doesn't matter. Yeah. It's an evidentiary package, and if you've deliberately held one element away, you've deliberately caused the defense, in this case, not to have the opportunity to judge the totality of the evidence.
Right. And because the CD, let's get down to it. The CD would have had a folder on it created by Detective Veely that was full of images that are basically tied to Bobby Dassey. And yes, Dean and Jerry would have seen that folder on the CD, and suddenly they would have been like, "Oh yeah, we got to look at these 7 DVDs. We got to get a guy in here. We got to get this looked at right now." And that's why the CD wasn't turned over, because it would have immediately tipped off Dean and Jerry that it wasn't what the prosecution was telling them it was. It wasn't Brendan's computer. It didn't reside in Brendan's room. It's, all of the things that they were really trying to hide from Dean and Jerry when it comes to this computer. The CD would have immediately made all of that very obvious to Dean and Jerry. That's why it was being hid.
Well, that's the big word, isn't it? Hide and seek.
Yeah.
The fact that they hid it, and therefore Dean and Jerry are supposed to seek it, Right. And one wonders, where did that order come from to hide it?
Right. Yeah.
I don't think it needed to come from anywhere. It was such a powerful disclosure.
Yeah.
But as I said, I think the big issue for me is that it doesn't matter what was on it. It's all part of the package, and there was a deliberate attempt to withhold some of the evidence, irrespective of what was on it.
Yeah.
And for the judge to then almost get into the argument saying, "Oh well, there was that information was on the other DVDs." Really? Did she actually look at those other DVDs to come to that conclusion?
I don't
think so. So where did she get that? Where did she get that view from? Who was advising her that would be the response she should give?
Right.
You can't come to that conclusion unless you've watched the DVDs, which require that special program and so on, right? So to me, because she adopted this tone about she should be an independent person, because she adopted this tone of almost saying, "I'm going to do everything from sentence 1 to say no," that was a big red flag for me.
Yeah.
She didn't at all demonstrate or acknowledge that there was a piece of evidence deliberately withheld.
Yeah. And keep in mind,
why wasn't that acknowledged?
And keep in mind, had they turned over the 7 DVDs to Dean and Jerry, just the DVDs, in like May or June or July, or or maybe even August or September. Had they turned over just the 7 DVDs, then when Dean and Jerry would have had 4 months to actually look at, get somebody in to look at, and realize that wasn't Brendan's computer, and that it actually had evidence that could impeach Bobby Dassey on it, and to where then I wouldn't care. I wouldn't give a damn about the CD. I would honestly say, you know what, screw the CD. I don't care about it. Because if they had been given that proper amount of time to actually be able to look at those DVDs and see what was actually on there. But that's not what happened. What happened is about 20 days before Denny's due, all this stuff gets dumped on Dean and Jerry right before the holiday season. That's what happens here. And that CD should have been turned over with it when they were doing it in a time crunch like that, because they had it for 8 months. And now they want to jam Dean and Jerry up and prevent Dean and Jerry from impeaching their most important witness.
But dude, if all of the 7 DVDs had been presented to Dean and Jerry, they looked at that and they saw that the state is claiming that's Brendan. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But had they had 4 months or so to look at all that stuff, they might have been able to figure it out.
And then they would have thought, whoa, hold on a sec. So Brendan's looking at all this stuff. And then they would have, as you say, they would have had time to figure out
that the prosecution was lying to him.
Was it Brendan or was it somebody else that was looking at stuff?
The Dassey computer, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
Because they are deliberately playing hide and seek in this. Yeah. And whether or not it's retaliatory, you know, because as far as they're concerned, you know, Dean and Jerry were playing hide and seek with the were they going to present the blood vial? Were they not? All that kind of stuff. It's really not. It's really not important, because at the end of the day, you just want every side. You just want them to play fair.
Yeah, everybody play by the same rules. Even playing field.
You know, you don't need your prosecutors. If the prosecution have enough a case against somebody, you don't need them to start playing these sort of games with people. You know, as we've discovered with the staircase, and I have no idea really where I stand on with regards to Mike Peterson on that.
I won't speak to his innocence or guilt at this point in time.
Yeah.
Let's not get onto that one just yet.
Well, I appreciate that Candace has got this issue with
hold on, Paul.
Not wanting.
Just 1 second. Did you have something else you wanted to say about Judge Angela, real quick, Mark?
I did.
Right. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Let's let Mark say before we switch subjects here.
I can only imagine, and I don't know out of first-hand evidence, that there must be some procedural obligation that when this evidence is available to the state, especially that's documented, that they have, you know, an obligation to turn it over within a reasonable period of time.
Right.
Going to your previous point, Richard, that we had this situation where they had this evidence. It wasn't evidence that they personally created. It was created by experts, right?
Right.
Why, if they would have seen it in May or June, or let's even give them the benefit of July, right? Mm-hmm. They could have handed it over then. And surely they're in breach of some obligation to hand the evidence over in a timely manner.
Yeah.
But do we see any discussion about that? Nope. None whatsoever.
Barely.
Do we see the judge saying, Angela Sutkiewicz saying, yes, this documentation should have been handed over earlier? Do we see any commentary about that?
Right.
No.
Right.
And then, in addition to that, Ken Pratt says, I think it's him, says, in all of that information, there's nothing there of evidentiary value.
Right.
Right? That's just a straight lie.
Yeah.
And it's not. But I guess there's a little. I mean, I have a lot of time for Jerry and Dean. I'm a fan of them, but I'm just wondering why they relied on that advice, if you like, the advice that there was nothing of evidentiary value, without saying, hang on a minute, we better make sure that that's true or not.
I would give them the
Easy to be
benefit
wise
of the
after
doubt.
the event, of course.
Yeah. As the dude has said, you know, they just didn't have the time. You know, I've been criticised for having to go at Dean and Jerry. I think they did the best that they did given the circumstances. I honestly do. Were there things that, you know, maybe from a sort of a legal nicety point of view, they could have done, but they didn't because it's not nice to do that? Yeah, probably. But I don't have a problem with. Honestly, I don't have a problem with Dean and Jerry. You know, they did the best they could.
Yeah. When they're being told it's Brendan's computer, computer, and so they don't think
playing by the
you know,
rules.
they don't think Brendan's going to end up testifying. So it completely cools their jets on that piece of evidence because it's been misrepresented. They had no idea. Trust me, they were not thinking that if they dipped into that computer that they were going to suddenly get this treasure trove of evidence that would allow them to impeach Bobby Dassey.
Of course they did.
They had no freaking way of realizing that that's what they would find there because it hadn't been represented properly from the word go.
Exactly.
No, but
hit the nail on the
point. But here's the point, I think, and you know, again, I'm a huge fan of them both. Is it the role of the defence lawyer, or is it appropriate for the defence lawyer to rely on the representations of the prosecution about the value
which
of the
is
evidence?
why I say these things should have been turned over back in like May, June, July, maybe August, and then the state could claim, well, they had it, and I would be like, okay, they had it for like 4 months, almost 5 months. Okay, you know what? They should have, you know, this is their fault. But the way it happened, I'm not willing to say it's Dean and Jerry's fault. Just because the way it was jammed up right before the holidays, that's obvious what they were doing there.
Listen, I'm going to have to shoot off because I've overstayed my welcome, and I'm gonna say cheerio. And if you do get a chance to mention what's coming up, all well and good.
Say whatever you want to say about the staircase before you go. Say whatever you want to say about Michael Peterson.
The only thing I would say about the staircase is that the parallels between the judges, Willis, Fox, Hudson, are they all going to regret what they did? I think so. I think they're all going to regret.
I think
the way they stood behind the state. And they backed everything that the state did, and basically what the state did was, well,
shady.
I'm not gonna say a swear word, but you know exactly what I mean.
Look,
they have tried to send innocent people to prison, and they have stood behind that decision. And to me, that is wrong.
Right, and I would say one thing though about Judge Hudson though, it would seem to me that Judge Hudson was pretty much hell-bent on correcting his mistakes in the second trial if it happened. He was, number one, not going to allow the Germany stuff, and he was pretty much alluding to the fact that he wasn't going to allow the extramarital affairs. I don't agree with that. I think the extramarital affairs are pertinent and relevant because I am not satisfied with Michael Peterson's assurances that Kathleen Peterson knew about his extramarital romps, you know, that he was doing. If I had something clear that showed me Kathleen was aware of it, I would be like, not guilty, that's it, this is over and done with for me. But because I don't know if Kathleen knew, that's my biggest sticking point. It's the one reason why I can't make a decision either way on him. Because if I could be sure Kathleen knew, I'd say he's not guilty. But the way it looks like she didn't know. And that creates motive. And, well, potential motive. And that's why I think that maybe downplay the fact that it's homosexual, but something about the extramarital nature of the affairs and something about it needs to come in because the jury needs to know that could be potential motive, in my mind.
Okay. I would just sort of fast forward. The big disappointment for me was the fact that Mike Peterson took the Alford plea.
Right.
I would, but I can see where he's coming from, because they have you have this system whereby you're either guilty or not guilty, as David Rudolph.
Because we need not proven, like those Scots,
in
right?
In Scotland, we have guilty, not proven, and if you're not proven, you're not proven, but you can still be hauled back in front of a court later on if they find more evidence that you were guilty.
So not proven. So not proven. Just it leaves it open for future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no double jeopardy. There is double jeopardy in Scotland, whereby there are certain situations when you cannot be tried again, obviously, because that's unfair. Right. But in certain situations, such as the Peterson case, that would have been absolutely ideal, and I think that's the reason why Rudolph mentions it. But anyway, my wife is.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm the taxi service.
Yes.
Catch you later.
Yes, we'll see you, buddy.
See you, Paul.
Have a good one.
Cheers, mate.
See you, mate.
Yeah, bye for now.
Bye.
All right, so yeah, interesting stuff with the staircase, though, huh?
It is interesting. I one of the things I find interesting about it is that obviously very early on, Michael Peterson decides he's going to have this French film crew follow the story along, right? So, and my view is that Michael has a very strange behavioural characteristic about him, but it's in part amplified by the fact that he knows
there's cameras.
He's got cameras on him the whole time, and he's an author, and so he's got that artistic flair to him. But but the big thing for me about that story was, well, there were many aspects of it that were pretty horrific, but the big thing about that story was the scientific evidence guy. I'm sorry, I just forgot his. When that came to the awareness in terms of the series, I thought, oh my God, as soon as that sort of behaviour goes on, it throws out every piece of credibility you might have had for the prosecution.
Right, exactly.
And
how can I believe anything you say, prosecution, because you already did that and that?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's absolutely correct. Because the system is predicated upon, the jury, I should say, at least, is predicated on, people being fair and just, right? Particularly the counsel, right?
Being reasonable.
And the counsel are there, the prosecution counsel are there saying this happened, that happened. They bring on the scientific evidence saying this occurred, that occurred. And as a juror, you want to believe that everyone's being truthful. It's an instinctive thing. You want to believe that.
Right.
And when you find out that not only was the Diva being untruthful, not just in this case, but in thousands or hundreds, I should say, of others,
right, and
the prosecution are happy to bring him on, you then lose just total faith in anything that's said.
Yeah. Especially when you start finding out. I mean, see, for me, I have the real issue with the fact that these wounds on the back of Kathleen's head are literally skin deep. I mean, they're quite literally skin deep, because there's no damage to the skull. There's no damage to the brain tissue underneath. And when you are hitting somebody in a fit of rage, in a crime of passion, you aren't hitting them with kid gloves so that so that the damage you're doing is only skin deep. You're hitting them with every bit of force you got, because you are in a murderous rage and you want them dead. For whatever reason, you don't want them talking because dead men tell no tales. Whatever the reason, that's how it's done. So to see these, although they look very terrible because they are very long and very terrible looking, but they are really not all that terrible. They are, in a lot of ways, very superficial. And that is the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I'm struggling with this case, trying to, resolve how those wounds could be there and what the hell could have caused them, such superficial wounds.
Yeah, obviously I'm no expert in any of this area, but I found it difficult to understand on a head that is curved, which we all have curved heads,
Right.
how you have such a long wound.
Right.
If you're hitting it with an object, the part of a straight object or a blunt object,
Yeah.
its contact with the skull would be a fairly short.
Right. So like
distance,
it would be like
maybe
hitting like
a
this.
couple of,
Only like the center part, only like right
Yeah.
where you're hitting here. That's the rest of it's going to be in the air. So yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So these long wounds, to me, what do I know? But don't seem to give evidence to the fact that it was a blunt object in terms of how it would actually react to a round surface.
Right.
That's the thing that's just a lay perspective. But
Well,
anyway, I found that a bit odd.
I think I've already ruled out the blowpoke. It was never the blowpoke. It was never anything like the blowpoke. And it was never anything shaped like a blowpoke. It was not anything like the blowpoke that did this. If it was, we would have spatter up high in the stairwell. There would be spatter above the pictures on the ceiling, because when you raise that thing back up, you're going to throw it all over the ceiling and up high on the walls. And the fact that that's missing is a telltale sign that the blowpoke was not part of this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think ultimately that object got discredited somewhere along the line in the series anyway, even though it was raised early on.
Right.
Because there was an issue about it, someone saying it was always there and then it wasn't there. And didn't they ultimately find it somewhere?
Well, that's the whole thing. The prosecution was claiming that it mysteriously disappeared, Mark. But if you watch in episode 12 or 13, David Rudolph is, he's constantly been receiving information. So he receives information that they found it the first day that they were there at the house. Two of the investigators had gone down into that garage or whatever, found it, brought it out onto the front lawn. One of them was holding it as they took a picture of it on the first day of the investigation. This picture never made it to the defense. All that, and the prosecution was claiming, and this blowpoke mysteriously disappeared. They knew exactly where the damn thing was. They knew exactly where it was, and they were still, I mean, this is the issue I have with Durham County at this point. It's like, no, you guys shot yourself in the foot. You guys destroyed your own credibility, and that's your fault.
And absolutely, they destroyed their credibility, not just with that particular case, but with any other matters that they've dealt with. This is the thing about when you're in a position of trust. The impact it has when you abuse that trust is way beyond the event itself.
Right.
It's the same issue with Stephen and Brendan. The behaviour of the law enforcement personnel in their cases is such that you can't believe anything that's said, and you want to. You want to believe that these people who are paid employees of the state, the taxpayers are funding, are going to uphold the pursuit of the truth and justice. And when you see clear evidence that that's not the case, then you think, what can I rely on anything here?
Right.
Like, here's a question I would like. Maybe we should do a video on this. Questions I would like to ask someone, right? That could be the heading, right? And one of the questions I would like to ask someone, which I mentioned in a brief little DVD or video thing the other day, is does Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert at the time even consciously aware of the Supreme Court's rules in regard to special care?
Yeah, right.
Were they even consciously aware? Because Tom Fassbender in that interview with Dateline about 18 months ago gets asked a very clear, concise question about, the interviewer, a lady, says, well, you could tell that he has a low IQ. Didn't that ring something in your mind about interviewing him? Because she was saying that, one of the criticisms of you, Mr. Fassbender, is the way you handled Brendan. And he says, I don't assess IQ, right?
Right.
Now, I mean, he's the investigator. So is that a lie, or is that he knows he should but he doesn't, or he doesn't even know that he should have, right?
As an investigator, in my opinion, he is trained to size people up within literally 20 seconds of meeting him.
Yeah.
He's like, that's how sharp his investigator skills should be. And to tell me that after an entire weekend with Brendan, that you had no clue that he was limited, you're an idiot, my friend. You know,
but I don't even know. I'm not even convinced, and which doesn't in any way mitigate their obligation. I'm not even convinced they even understand, if they have this limited individual, that means anything different from anyone. It seems to me that they think they're just as much up for grabs as any other potential person, and that doesn't excuse it, by the way.
Right.
But I just think that's why, you know, we talk about law reform post all this, that, you know, juveniles, and especially juveniles with limited intellectual issues, why don't we have a checklist that these guys have got to complete to say, we did this, we did that, we got this assessed, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So it's not left to the individual intellect or the individual personality or the individual experience or otherwise of an investigating officer. It should be a checklist of things that must be followed when you're dealing with a juvenile. Because one of those
because we're not playing games with kids, you know, freedom here. You know, we kind of want to be sure what the hell we're doing before we take the life of a, you know, well, the freedom of a juvenile, you know. Yeah.
And my supplementary question to Mr. Fassbender under the heading of questions I would like to ask is, Mr. Fassbender, if you have a son, he may have a son, who was of Brendan's age and intellectual ability, would have you been happy that your son got handled in the same way that you treated Brendan? Right? Would he, as a father, be happy with that a 16-year-old son of his that had intellectual, you know, limitations, got interviewed 5 occasions without a lawyer present, and all that went on, which I won't go over? Would he, as a father, be happy that he got his proper legal and justice treatment in those circumstances?
Because, well, yeah, but you know what he's going to say, right? Well, you know how he's going to think of that, right? He's not Barb. He's not intimidated by him. He's a big bad investigator. He would just run into wherever they were interrogating his son, and he would raise he would raise hell, and he would get the problem resolved. Unfortunately, he's not Brendan's father. Brendan's mother is not quite, you know, she's not able to do that on the same level that he is. And I think that's the difference for Tom Fassbender.
Yeah. Well, then that tells you why we need the checklist, because then it becomes a personalised best endeavours thing. It shouldn't be up to a parent to decide to know the law and what's right or wrong.
Right.
Barb didn't go into those interviews because she was told that she shouldn't, and in one case told that she couldn't, that what Brendan was going to reveal was too horrific for her to see or hear.
Yep.
Now, even if that were true, he should have had a lawyer present. He should have had a lawyer present. The lawyer should have been sitting there in the investigation room saying to Brendan, don't answer that question.
Right.
You can answer that question. Don't answer that question.
Right.
Because Brendan incriminated himself. Not only incriminated himself, he incriminated himself on the basis of being fed information.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be left up to a parent's skills, whether they're competent or knowledgeable of the law or not, or they have a strong personality or not, or even Brendan as a 16-year-old to be asked, you know, do you understand your Miranda rights? Brendan just nods, right? He doesn't understand what that means or the implications.
Absolutely.
And to allow him to be the arbiter of his own best interests is totally counterintuitive to the intention of the special care rules.
Right.
So the special care rules are designed, in effect, to give evidence to the fact that people who are juveniles and of special needs are not capable of looking after their own best interests. That's why they have special care rules.
Right.
But, you know, that just was totally dismissed and unimportant when it got to the case of Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender. And so they're parts of my questions I would like to ask. You know? anyway,
my question for Tom and Mark is, how'd you get your noses to shrink back down after?
yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna show everybody my meme. Why I just said that right now.
And this is the little meme I was kind of referencing, made a while back, but I feel is very apt.
All right,
Okay.
and we're back.
I just don't, as human beings, I just don't know how they can look themselves in the mirror, and knowing what they did to Brendan, and knowing how they abused his right to have proper representation. Let alone, I won't get into the wonderful story about Kaczynski and O'Kelly, right? Who that's another level, of course, but I just don't know how they can sleep at night and think they had done the right thing.
Yeah, and that everything's good and hunky-dory, right?
And if they think they did the right thing, oh, woe is me. Seriously, if they think they did the right thing, the system is really up shit creek, to use the expression.
Yeah.
Because if they think their behaviour is okay, well
Right.
then, there's bad times ahead. I guess they're both, he's not retired, but as an investigator he is.
Well,
So,
I am given hope because one of the amicus briefs filed for Brendan was by, former prosecutors, chiefs of police, and law enforcement officers. So there is a cell out there of law enforcement and chiefs of police and prosecutors that have taken this issue to heart and think it's important, and that gives me at least a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I agree. Which actually begs the question, there's questions I would like to ask. There is a third one if I'm permitted, and that is I would like to ask SCOTUS, right? And that is, firstly, did you actually read the submission and the amicus brief?
Right.
And if you did, and let's hope you did read them, are you satisfied that the special care rules that are under your purview were properly attended to in Brendan's case?
Right.
In other words, you have no criticism of the way Brendan was handled.
Right.
And because if you don't have any criticism, well, if you didn't, as they didn't even want to consider the matter, you can only presume that they made that actively. They actively
Right.
looked at the case record and said, no, Brendan was properly handled.
Right.
Right?
If that,
And then
yeah.
what follows, and what follows from that is, let's just say that Brendan had won the on-bank review,
Yeah.
and the state had appealed to the Supreme Court, which one would presume they would have.
Yeah. Would it have
Do you
been
think that
accepted
would
then?
have- Exactly.
Right.
Would have it? Even though you're dealing with the same set of circumstances. So I love to want to support, the justice system, particularly at the judicial court level. But I don't see the evidence at the court level that makes me feel comfortable. I do in some judges, like the minority decision. I see a really commitment to intellectual concern and thought, and all the amicus briefs was likewise. I thought, oh, this is really inspirational. I'm really glad these are all happening.
Yeah.
But for the Supreme Court to effectively say we're happy how Brendan Dassey got handled, that's effectively what they're saying, because they didn't want to.
Or that it wasn't grievous enough to make it an issue they care about, right?
What?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You could say that they either agree with it, or they feel that it wasn't, a grievous enough error for them to have to deal with it. I think it could go either one of those. But either way,
yeah, and if you take the latter one, are they saying that their special care rules were properly followed,
right,
or properly honoured, if I can call it that?
right.
Because where was the special care? What, they gave him a sandwich,
Yeah,
and a can of soda? Is that what we call special care?
yeah,
I don't think so.
right.
So they're the issues that bother me, and they're the when questions I would like to ask. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court aren't obliged to give the reasons for their decision. So we never really know what goes on. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that we've covered everything here.
Okay.
Any other things?
And
Let me see. Was there anything else about the staircase? There was one other thing about the staircase, though, actually, that I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And that is the medical examiner.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing that David Rudolph got in the post-conviction process was he got a copy of a note from Radish, the medical examiner, where she says that originally she did not want to say blunt force trauma, which makes sense to me, because when I hear the wounds described, I wouldn't want to say blunt force trauma either. So then, so we hear her say that she didn't want to do that, but she ended up feeling pressure from the head medical examiner there in Durham, and that she ended up saying blunt force trauma because of that. And that once again shows that, you know, Durham's got their hand in the cookie jar, and they're just playing around with the cookies essentially in there. You know what I mean? That's
and the analogy of that to Stephen's case is Tom Fassbender's note to Sherry Colhane.
Right.
Try to find evidence of Teresa in the house or the garage.
Put her in the house or garage. Right.
Yeah. So that's the same thing, you know. So where is all the independence, right? Which is what you hope, and your jury would hope to expect. There'd be independence of thought there. So,
Yep. So, it's
could
crazy. Go ahead.
With one question, the next step in the process is the matter will be a filing back up. It's automatically back up at the Court of Appeals.
Well, it's automatically going to go back to the Court of Appeals now because they remanded it here to Judge Angela. She made a decision, so now it's going to go back there.
Yeah.
They're going to review her decision, you know, or whatever, and then Steve still has the original appeal for his original motion for post-conviction relief. That appeal is also still there with the appeals court. So he's essentially now, when this comes back, well, as it has now done, it's come back from the district court back to the appeals court. Stephen essentially has two things going at the moment until the Court of Appeals rules on any of it. So it's essentially right now we're waiting to hear from the Court of Appeals, but Stephen has two things pending with the Court of Appeals in my mind at this moment.
Yes, that's how I understand. And what time frame can we expect on when
that one? I'm not
next
sure.
Step will take place.
But
maybe
hoping within a week or two, just because the Court of Appeals put kind of a rush on it to begin with when they sent it down.
Okay.
So let's hope that they're gonna, put a little bit of a priority on it, and then we might hear within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that's good. Well,
I'm hoping
something to look out for. Yeah.
So.
All right, my friend.
It's been fun, buddy.
Yeah, always good to speak with you.
Have fun over there in Romania. Send me a cool postcard.
I will. I will, for sure.
All right.
There's an interesting piece of history.
Uh-oh. We're losing your audio. Uh-oh. You just froze
That'd
up.
Be an interesting...
There you are. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'm back here. Someone tried to ring me. I don't know why. But, I won't bore you any further except to say that the days of communism are interesting, a set of circumstances to describe what people who are angry do when their leaders don't do the right thing. And back in Christmas of 1989, when the communist wall fell, at least in Romania, they took the president and his wife, who weren't much liked, and had a 45-minute military trial and took them out the back of the courtroom and shot them.
Oh, wow.
So that's in 1989. So
yeah, right.
You know,
it was the fall of the Berlin Wall. Hey, the world was taking baby steps into evolution.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah.
So, all right,
all
buddy.
the best, my friends.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
It's been fun having you.
Okay.
We'll see you later.
All the best. Bye.